stigma index for country networks, for organizations of people living with HIV, means that you can then measure the extent to which stigma affects people living with HIV and find interventions.
I think there was a lot of apprehension in terms of us wanting to implement the stigma index itself. Everyone thought, I think with the coming in of treatment now, people on treatment, everyone knows about HIV. Why do the stigma index? A lot of people are able to take their medication. So with the findings that we came up with, it actually confirmed that there was a lot of stigma that was going on in there.
Now, one of the things that really got us was that we were not professionals. We were not professional researchers. We were just civil society guys, advocates out there trying to prove that there is indeed stigma in the community. Because we've had cases where some good professors will fault our methodology, will fault all what we did. But our argument has always been that we may not have done it right, but we just wanted to prove that there are indeed people who live in the communities who are being faced with one form of stigma.
We still found very high levels of stigma as well in the faith communities. So quite a number of people that we interviewed told us that because of living with HIV, the position I had in church, or if people knew that I'm living with HIV, then that position was taken away.
I was not aware that in these days we still have people living with HIV that are stigmatizing themselves.
Raise your hands, healthcare facilities, and just shout out your country names. Families, our own families, communities, which other countries?
Congo. Actually, at this time, people in Malawi were on treatment which was stavudine-based, which is the D40, and we realized that a lot of people were actually experiencing side effects from the drug. They had deformities as a result of the drug, and the results of the stigma index helped us to reach out to the government to provide the evidence and to advocate for the switch in the treatment that people were taking. And that was a plus, I think, for us.
There was no legal backing in Nigeria that supports people living with, that protects people living with HIV and AIDS. And that was why the results of the index was very instrumental when we approached government, telling them that there is indeed stigma and that there is that very dire need for protection. And this led to the passage of the anti-stigma law in late 2014, which for once is protecting people living with HIV and AIDS from any form of violation, either in the workplace, whether in the family, whether in the health facility.
To look at how is stigma and discrimination actually fueling HIV responses within the region. So as a regional response, we wanted to look at key things of what we can do. I think at this point, we've been doing stigma indexes, we've been doing reports. So we have all this information. Now, all that we have to do is actually implement. So
we talk about self-stigma, we talk about stigma a lot, but in fact, it is not because people hate themselves. It is because the environment is so harmful that people are internalizing stigma. So looking at stigma just from the perspective of self will give us a distorted picture of why self-stigma is so high. It is because of an environment that is not protective. And for me, what is really powerful about the stigma index as a tool is that it speaks about stigma not as something that is on the side, something that is in the air, but it also speaks about how stigma links to discrimination in health, how stigma links to discrimination in housing, how stigma links to discrimination in employment, but then it goes beyond stigma and discrimination to talk about other human rights violations like forced sterilization, like many other forms of human rights violations. So the stigma index is a powerful tool. People living with HIV, because HIV is ultimately a medical condition, people actually have to interact with the healthcare setting. Unfortunately, this is where they experience stigma. So UNAIDS want to make it a focus area, stopping discrimination in healthcare as a priority in the year to come. In November,
this is research that's community-led, it's PLHIV-led, and that's ultimately very important.
How many people again? 60,000. 60,000 people have been involved in this project.
The importance of the stigma index is that it's what everyone's talked about. It's important for advocacy. It's to develop evidence base that we can use to shape advocacy. We worked specifically in the Netherlands to kind of support countries as they start to roll them out. I think there are a couple of things that I heard that I also want to react to. I mean, it's not just the stigma, it's stigma between our communities. One of the things that we've been hearing more and more from other PLHIV networks is about how key populations might fit within the stigma index. So one of the new tools that we'll be developing is the key population engagement tool, and if you get a chance, you can come to the community village and hear more about that. So where we get PLHIV networks to find out how they're engaging key populations living with HIV in terms of their work. And so this is something that we need to, not just self-stigma, but stigma between our communities. I've heard from key populations like MSM who are negative, being stigmatizing towards MSM who are positive. So
it's us women who give birth to children, and it's us women who can give birth to children who are HIV negative. It's us women who can contribute to that HIV-free generation. But if our SRH rights are not respected, protected, and adhered to, we may not achieve that.
We heard that UNAIDS is finally going to focus attention on healthcare facilities. We really desperately need it, particularly for women living with HIV. And she talked about sexual and reproductive rights. We heard about coerced and forced sterilization. We learned from the panel across the board, from Malawi, Zambia, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Uganda, how PLHIV networks are collecting and documenting the evidence and how they're using it to change their constitution, to advocate for better treatment, better antiretrovirals. Yes, we heard from GNP Plus about the scale of the stigma index and how we can use it to build a global movement that talks, not just, talks about stigma and how it directly leads to gross human rights violations. And without that, we cannot end AIDS. We cannot end AIDS without the community, and we cannot end AIDS without tackling stigma and discrimination. Before we leave, I say 90, 90, 90, you say zero discrimination. 90, 90, 90.